Right. Good afternoon, fellow schoolmates of the International College School, and welcome to Los Baños. Well, Arvin has shown this map a while ago. So here it is again. We will get to identify what we mean by ultramafics later in the next few slides. But first, let's just have a quick look at biodiversity in Southeast Asia. Arvin mentioned a lot about herbs. This is from a relatively recent paper by Peter Raven in 2020. Look at the number of vascular plants. 50,000 species, butterflies 4,000, snakes 751. Now, where we are now, of the three major tropical areas of the world, is regarded as proportionately the richest in plant diversity for its size, and also for all others biodiversity in general. Look at the Southeast Asia is only 5.7 million square kilometers. Afrotropical is 22.6. Latin America 19.7. So now between this is our paper from about 2019. Between 2011 to 2017, already 2,000 species have been described from Southeast Asia. Sumatra alone, 116, Vietnam 530, Thailand 450, the Philippines 470. That's an average of nearly 400 new species, as we earlier noted in the previous slide. Now, here is Southeast Asia again. This region is a spectacular region of volcanic activity, seismicity, and a lot of typhoons, at least for the Philippines anyway. So the Philippines, and directly at the bottom is Sulawesi, and on the right side is Maluku, or Moluccas. They lie between the Indian-Australian plate and the Sundaland plate, right there. Sundaland is a stable plate that is part of mainly Southeast Asia, the mainland. So all of those triangles are actually volcanoes in the Philippines, and those lines are actually fault lines for earthquakes. So every now and then, in this country, earthquake occurs, except in Palawan, which unfortunately also now is typhoon prone, but sits on stable ground. Very little activity there. Now, if one have a look again at Sunda Siao, there you go, Sundaland, Sumatra, Malay Peninsula, Indochina, and Borneo, and Java, they sit on stable ground. And in fact, if you see, Palawan is also part of Sundaland, very stable. But the rest of the Philippines, Sulawesi, Maluku, and the lesser Sunda Islands, including Bali, are right between the Indian-Australian plate and the Eurasian plate. These areas move about 8 to 10 centimeters every year. So likely in the future we will all go back to the bottom of the sea. But that might take a long while. So for those who probably remember, there is such a thing as a Wallace line. You know where it is? It's between Bali and Lombok, straight up Makassar Strait, between Borneo and Sulawesi, then turn right just below Mindanao towards the right. Thank you, Sir Arvin, for water. So the Wallace line is a boundary between the Oriental and Australian faunal regions proposed by the 19th century British naturalist Alfred Russell Wallace. The line extends from the Indian Ocean, we've seen before. And there's quite a distinction in terms of fauna and relatively for flora. But although it's very rarely mentioned now in papers. Well, just to put more color to it, look at the triangles again. Some of them have disappeared, volcanoes, but you can see very clearly the yellow lines on the shelf. Here, Australia, the southern plate, India, Australian plate. All those green areas come from the bottom of the sea. They merge with existing islands or form different islands on their own. Like I said, some of the volcanoes have eventually disappeared. There's always a volcano that's erupting. The lake just very near here is active in northern Negros. So here we go. Ultramafics, they are associated with uplifting of what are known as ophiolite plates from the mantle of the covers the middle part of the earth, and they, along with what are known as subduction zones, so these zones move downwards and then uplift the others, so that raises some of the rocks. So the original rocks, which are what we refer to here as ophiolitics, they harbor eventually, when exposed on surface, they harbor eventually ultramafic vegetation. These places, like I said, they come from the deep sea associated with subduction zones and movement of tectonic plates. Ultramafics represent less than 1% of the Earth's terrestrial surface, but in the world, well, for now you can see all those red circles, which are nickel laterites, very recent, Miocene to present. Some of the older ones, recent ones, are in the Caribbean, but the Cretaceous and Mesozoic are in Australia. The older ones, Mesozoic, in the Mediterranean, and of course Russia. These are now sources of nickel. So Miocene is 33 to 5 million years ago. So we use the term ultramafics to refer to geographical areas that are characterized by ultramafic rocks or ultramafic derived salts, and I define what we mean by ultramafic. So igneous rocks with very low silica content and high magnesium and ion concentrations derived from mantle melting, the one that covers the core of the earth. So those are igneous rocks, right? Now, going back to the Southeast Asian map, this is where what are referred to as ultramafic outcrops, meaning those have been uplifted above seawater in Southeast Asia. You can see the Philippines, Palawan, part of northern Borneo in Sabah, Sulawesi, Maluku, New Guinea, little bits in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Laos, and Vietnam, little bits. I put the graph there in terms of the biodiversity. So here is part of the ultramafic areas in Sabah, Malaysia. You can see that connect there, square with connect very closely with Palawan. So we have a number of mountains there. I'll only mention Tambuyukan later on, but Mount Kinabalu is there. Tambuyukan, of course, is wholly entirely ultramafic in geology. There's all the way to Mount Silam as well on the eastern side of Sabah Peninsula. You can see the Google map. Now, in the Philippines, these are the ophiolitic belts. What we refer to, we have something that comes all the way from northern Luzon Zambales, and it curves down to the Mindoro. On the eastern side, you have something that comes from Isabela in the north to Samar to Dinaga. There's another one from Palawan that goes all the way, you can see, to Sabah. And there's another one from Zamboanga Peninsula all the way to Basilan, to Tawi-Tawi, then to Sabah again. So, not only are they related closely in terms of the rocks, they're also very closely related to the vegetation. This one is in Dinaga, Mount Redondo. I wish we could have a time to go there. This is white forest on Mount Redondo, which is projected to be mined very soon. There are still many species that we haven't closely examined. So if we don't count, they don't count. Here, so approximately just 5% of the total land area of this country is ultramafic. But ultramafic are just not just scratch, so they are also very high in terms of heavy metals for nickel, chromium, and cobalt. That is why they are targeted for mining. Much of the country's ultramafic vegetation is also threatened by lots of mining, and you can see the damage with mining alone is significant because they just, to make holes, they scrape the vegetation and get the soil. But they don't put back the vegetation again. So, most ultramafic areas are subject to mining for nickel. Now, ultramafic rocks are often referred to as peridotite, or if you like, serpentinite. Sometimes they refer to serpentine soil. Serpentine because if you got in close to the rocks under a microscope, the rocks look like the scale of snakes. Very colorful, very bright. So serpentine soils. Ultramafic is usually called ultra-basic. So this photo is from Dinagat Island. This is just below Mount Redondo, where in some places only you can see very relatively thin soil has developed. No? And in some areas already thick. Those soils are referred to as laterite soil, with extensive rain and very high temperatures. All those rocks over many years become soil, which is brown in nature and very high in iron and nickel. On Palawan Island, we have some very large peridotite, and beside it is the nickel hyperaccumulator on Infantus valguyi. This one accumulates up to 1.8% nickel in the leaves, and it also produces a green sap from between the bark and the stem, the cambium, which at least 24% nickel. Now imagine planting this in large scale and rubber, and then harvesting the sap, and we don't have to cut down our forests. Okay. Still in Palawan, and like said, with excessive rainfall, usually exceeding 1,000 millimeters per year, and temperatures of 23 to 31 degrees, you get laterites with intense weathering of the rocks. It's become like this one. Soil. This one is in Surigao in the northeastern Philippines. So ultramafic rocks develop as laterites from intense weathering and prolonged bleaching, containing a significant concentration of nickel in one or more several horizons. Now we mentioned Alfred Russel Wallace. He says, nothing can be more abrupt than the change often due to diversity of soil. You get different vegetation between different types of soil. And very clearly here, this is Mount Bloomfield on Palawan. It's 800 meters, very near St. Paul's Bay National Park. You can see that line of forest down below. That one below is on grey rock, different substrate. From that up to the summit is ultramafic. Very distinctly. So the British Arnold Russell Wallace recognized that plant adaptation to different soil types is evidence of a strong natural selection imposed by ecological discontinuities. Right? Now, we go back to Mount Tambuyukon in Sabah, dwarf forest, on a very steep place. The whole geology is ultramafic. You can see that even on a map. Sometimes you can figure out, oh, this is ultramafic just because of the map, but because you can also have soil maps to do that. So you have extremely scrub vegetation, stunted with a lot of rocks, peridotite exposed, not yet subject to conversion to landslide. In the Philippines, you go to Mount Giting this is in the summit. You have grassy portion, no trees, but just monocots and small plants with a lot of exposure. This is the summit of Mount Giting. Again, we go to Mount Redondo, my favorite. We see also rocks, very stunted forest. About 94% of the tree species here shown range only from 1 cm to 10 cm. Very small diameter trees, very crowded, very short stunted. 6% with only a diameter of 10 to 20 centimeters. Most trees are between 1 to 2 meters tall, except there are few in certain areas where the soil is thickened. This is Professor Amoroso's favorite. This is Mount Hamigitan. Also a vegetation of ultramafic soils. You can see here the orchids are taller than some of the trees. And that also was a new species. I counted but did not collect without a permit. Eventually some foreigner came and described it as a new species. The classic example that Marvin mentions. You've seen this photograph early on. This is what they refer to, if you go there, they refer to as the red mountains because of the soil. Laterite soil and reddish brown in color, stunted forest, low elevation. The entire area here is within a mining concession. But previously also heavily harvested for the very big trees now. Now, ultramafic sites are often regarded as an extreme environment or plots. They are characterized by physical and chemical conditions that are normally adverse to plant. If you were a plant, you wouldn't want to grow on ultramafic plants because the chemicals in the soil can be very toxic to your system. So, deficient in potassium, phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen. Very low calcium magnesium ratio. And most importantly, very high concentrations of heavy metals, which can be toxic to your system. Plus, water stress. Plants we know, like us, we need water, which is a function of the low retaining capacity of ultramafic soils. Dark color, evaporation is very high. And also quickly subjected to very high wind velocities. So if you were a plant, don't go there. But there are some plants which are very happy to be there. Look at this plant. This is Drosera ultramafica, very recently discovered. This is from Mount Matalingahan, from Palawan. You can see this is a carnivorous plant. You can see the leaves. They have this shiny globules of tips. No? If you weren't sick, you don't go there. But It's a flowering plant. It has to be pollinated, but the plant is intelligent enough to put the flowers way, way above where they can be trapped by the. So the plant can still be pollinated. Diba? Correct. Same thing. This is from Isabella. Look at them. They're growing directly on pebbles of automatic growing. And they have very long peduncles for their flowers and still be pollinated. Why? Good. Otherwise, I won't be pollinated. No? So, carnivory is a way of very poor soils. You get your nutrients from eating meat, or insects, or frogs, or lizards. What's another way? Another carnivorous plant in automatics. You probably have this in Korea, I don't know, maybe in the southern part. I'm sure you have Drosera. So the picture is actually an extension of the leaf, which develops into like a glass or a pitcher, and it's filled with water. Now, if you are an insect, you don't want to go there, but unfortunately, they are enticed by the shiny. It provides some sweet things around the periphery. If you go there, then you fall into the trap, and the enzymes with water is going to slowly digest your whole body. Here, an example. Very white, shiny things, and many insects fall into the trap. Way of supplementing the very low fertility of the soils on it automatically. I've seen examples of Kinabalu, frogs, or I think frogs in the Philippines, and in Sabah, whole rats. They use the whole thing as their own toilet. One other thing, some plants, not all of them, because you know legumes, they develop what? What are they called? Nitrogen fixing nodules, which is an association with some form of fungi or bacteria. And this is a casorina type thing. They have this and to supplement nitrogen in the soil. This is endemic to Palawan on Mount Bloomfield. You've seen that. Now, a very simple paragraph just to have a look at the patterns of metal tolerance of plants in automatic. You have non-tolerant here on this side because there's no metal C, non-tolerant, you know, so they don't grow there. Here you have this B port. Some populations occur on metalliferous soil, so they're what referred to as facultative metallophytes. Then C is also facultative because some of the populations grow on non-metalliferous soils like the C. But D is strict obligate metallophytes, like metallophytes, like epiphytes, hydrophytes, right? So they are unique species that have the ability to tolerate metal toxicity, survive, and reproduce on metalliferous soil. That's very important. You have to grow there to be called a metallophyte and reproduce there. There is, however, a very small fragment of those metallophytes that are able to accumulate metal elements in their tissues. We've seen in Pantus a while ago here, they accumulate up to 100 times greater than those measured on shoots of the common non-accumulated plants in the same area. That's very unique, huh? What we refer to as metal-eating plants here. It's simple. So a normal plant will grow but eventually die. That is the habitual threshold. You get a metal excluder, can grow over a wide range of toxic levels, but able to prevent entry of metals into aerial parts. But it doesn't go above the root collar, always on the roots. By metal by indicator threshold, you get some metals accumulated on the leaves, some. That's a metal by indicator. Take up metals over a wider range than normal plants, and the concentration of plant leaves reflect that of the soil. Then we have metal hyperaccumulation, able to withstand much higher concentrations of metals than normal plants, able to accumulate even elevated concentrations of plants. Now, throughout the phylogeny of approximately 369 angiosperms, these are the pink ones, we able to accumulate nickel. Those with black squares there are those what we refer to as hyper nickel, or what I refer to as super hyper. 1,000 is you're already hyper. 10 times sometimes that's extreme. So this is what I described in about 2012, I think, that I called the Noria nickel possess nickel in the leaves. It's about 18%. There are only 35 species in the world. We have in this country about 11. Don't tell anybody. So what it says here is that hyperplator have evolved independently across the entire phylogeny, the entire angiosperms. Now, it's not a phylogenetic thing, it's an ecological thing, adaptation. But this is expanded in New Caledonia, same genus, same species. The one with the yellow one is Gabriele. Yellow tag is Semperflorens. Semperflorens is down here, green, which means sometimes even species belonging to the same genus do not necessarily accumulate for the same amount of nickel. This is what I've seen in some valleys. They used to be in the same genus, Pylanthus. This one here, now Envica, is called 17.5. In Panthascurinae, less than 100 on this same area. All right. Now here is again, if you remember the opilitic belts, this is Scaevola micranta, which of course in the Philippines all the way to Lanyo Island, part of Taiwan. Probably that Lanyo Island has some ultramafic rocks. Throughout the Philippines and all the way to Sabah. It also goes all the way to Mount Hamiguitan, to Talaud Island, just south of Mount Hamiguitan in Indonesia. Lymphanthus balbui, which you see, it grows in Palawan all the way to Sabah. Now, we've noted that most, in the abstract, I know that most of the ultramafic vegetation in the Mediterranean, which is Spain and the southern part, and also North America, they tend to be stunted. Very much like the ones we have in this country, Mount Redondo. You can see how tall the vegetation is. But some other forests in the Philippines are also very tall. This is still Mount Redondo. Beautiful place, soon to be mine. But you can see ultramafic but very tall trees. And in some valleys, that one is in, this is in Palawan. This one is in some valleys, you get diplocarbs. So perhaps, and this is, we haven't done that many experiments yet, that organisms actually help, not just the ones we adaptation, but some form of fungi or bacteria are in the soil to help lessen toxicity and therefore help the plants absorb nutrients and adapt themselves. So here we go. Towards the end, we just show you some of the across the Philippines. This is those Hermanos Islands in Ilocos, some of the plants. In Isabela, get some dwarf forest also. In Zambales, many of the trees here are actually endemic. You can see pine forest related. Again, Nepenthes, pitcher plants, pine forest, or in Mindoro, subject to mining as well. In Aurora province, on Sibuyan Island, some very nice helmet orchids. Again, that's Mount Bloomfield, seen early on. In the central part of Palawan, you get that. That's the largest automatic vegetation. Some of it being mined down at the lower surface, lower slopes rather. In Mount Matalingahan, you've seen Drosera automatica. In Samar, and the very nice town of Redondo, of Loreto, where Mount Redondo is. And in Surigao, some of them still flow clean water. On Mount Hamigita, the Twin Falls, Mount Hamigita, that's a nice new plant named after Periong. Now, they're not only being threatened by mining, but also for local use. So people burn trees or they cut down trees, but these are very heavy in terms of wood density, so they can't carry them. Some of them are simply burn them for charcoal production. But still, it is mining that is threatening these very unique ecosystems. On that note, I end up my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elvino Fernando. Again, he's